Australia overnight. Now, can we pave the way to safety and independence for those experiencing homelessness in Australia, especially youth homelessness? Now, the causes of homelessness are complex and include a broad range of individual circumstances: trauma, mental health, family and domestic violence, housing supply and affordability. And Anchor Community Care is an independent, not-for-profit organisation that aims to support and build a pathway for young people experiencing homelessness. And we're joined now on the line. The CEO of Anchor Community Care, Heidi Tucker, joins us on Australia Overnight. Hi there, Heidi.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm
and hello
going
to your listeners,
well.
Pat.
Thank you for joining us here in the wee small hours on the program. So we appreciate that. I guess the natural point to start with, and we're going to talk about you and the great work that you do there at Anchor. Tell us more about, I mentioned a bit in the intro there, about Anchor Community Care and exactly what you do.
Sure. Anchor Community Care has been an organisation that's been around for nearly 50 years now, not perhaps in its current format, but it's been serving the outer eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and more recently down into places like Pakenham and Cranbourne, and then down into Sale. So we've grown over the years. So Anchor Community Care, look, our motto is that we provide pathways for people from homelessness. But I think that in more recent times, our focus and our bullseye really is about preventing homelessness. What we know about young people coming into or, experiencing homelessness is it can have very long-term, if not lifelong experience for them and impacts for their whole lives. So preventing it seems to us to be a much better idea than dealing with the crisis as it comes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You're preventing it, as you say. Once you get to homelessness, the effect is a lifelong effect. So you're in there early to prevent it. Love it.
Yeah. Correct. And we know there are some drivers that lead to homelessness. One of them is definitely people that have had a care experience. So people who have been taken into what we call out-of-home care, and they can be, most of your listeners will be quite familiar with what foster care is. So that's children who are not safe to stay with their birth parents. They come in via legal means, so that there's legalities around all of this, and they go to live with people who are essentially, to begin with, strangers, and they're called foster carers. Or they maybe need to leave their birth family and live with other extended family members, and that's called kinship care. And it most often is with grandparents, aunts, uncles, but it can be a whole raft of other people as well that are known to the child. So that we know, if you have an experience of being in care, we know that it does leave you with a lifetime of trauma and grief often, and it can certainly be a precursor to homelessness. We do know that, it has been in the past that 50% of kids or young people who leave care can experience homelessness within the first 3 years.
Gotcha.
So, so it's quite a strong precursor. So within our programs, we absolutely want to make kids, as they grow up and into young people, resilient and have a clear pathway, and obviously, pushing education, independent living, all that sort of stuff.
Wonderful.
So that's one way. Another way, I guess, is that we have what people might not know is that 2/5 of all homeless people in Australia are children usually under about 12. And they are coming into homelessness with their parents, usually a mother who's escaped a violent partner. And what we know is that, those children, that's a very, very traumatic experience. Often they're too young to really understand what's happening. Yes. And so Anchor has done some work in the last couple of years within our homelessness response programs, trying to lift up the voices of these young children and give them a voice. The homelessness system as a system is very much focused on adults and focused on getting them tenancy, which you would
Right.
understand.
Yes. Yes.
Obviously.
So this is an interesting point that
Yeah.
we should sort of,
Yeah.
so I'll just remind our listeners, Heidi Tucker, CEO of
Yeah.
Anchor, is on the line. Right.
Yeah.
So, of course, the process
Yeah.
is about looking after the adults, making sure
Yeah.
mum's okay after this
Yeah.
terrible experience. But what about the
Yeah.
children get left behind
Yeah.
there, Heidi?
Yeah, they do. They really do. They really, really do. They become silent little parties to the adults in their lives. And so we've run a pilot program with some very generous philanthropic funding, and we actually started to talk to young children without their parents, or first of all with their parents being there, and obviously with their parents' permission, and then spending some time with them with a person who was quite well qualified, a family therapist qualified to do that.
Yes.
And we started to say, what's it been like for you? And we had so many of these kids say to us, no one has ever asked me how I am.
Oh my God, that
No
makes me
one's ever
sad.
asked. I know, no
Oh,
one's ever asked. And what we know about children that become homeless as children, 50% of them become homeless as adults. And that was a very verifiable Canadian study that did that. And so for us, once again, we go back to preventing homelessness. So sort of intervening early with these young kids when they're in homelessness with their families, as I say, usually mum, and actually saying, how are you feeling? What do you need? How's school going? Have you got friends? All of that sort of stuff. So that's another thing that we do. Another thing we do is we have what we call a Youth Foyer program.
right.
And that is for young people 16 to about 21. This is for young people to have 2 years of good quality accommodation at a social housing price, so a very, very small price.
Yes.
And the Youth Foyer, it's a movement right across a number of Western countries, including Australia. And it actually is about that give and take. So it's actually about, for the accommodation and the support that we give you, what you need to do is to re-engage back in education, finish your education or your training, and also engage in our programs, engage in looking after your mental health, etc. So it's a bit of a quid pro quo, if you like. It's a program, and I think people like it because they like a hand up and not a handout. They like the fact that actually there's something coming back in return. Civic participation, all of our kids that are in our Youth Foyer program, which is this accommodation program, they all do some sort of part-time work, volunteering, etc. So it's participation as well in the community, which is absolutely critical, because the first thing that people lose when they are in trauma, whether it be when they're a child and out of, being removed from their family, whether it be a person who becomes homeless, whether it's children who become homeless with their parents, the first thing they lose is connection to their community, connection to their street, connection to their next door neighbours, if you like.
Does this tie into a bit of a theme that comes through when we talk back at various topics, and that's what we do on this program, sort of, we bounce around with different things, but I'm thinking when we talk about this type of thing, so, okay, giving back, being connected to your community, is it right to say, we talk about young people, if you provide boundaries for them and you say that there's the consequences to actions, you just give them a framework you show them that you care. Is that part of, just more of a philosophical question there, Heidi, is that what you're doing as well? You're showing them that, they matter and you care and there's boundaries and this is the way we need to operate type thing.
Yeah. Look, I think, one of the things that does tie a lot together at Anchor is that, you're right, we act a bit as a substitute parent in these sorts of services. That's what you feel like, that you become, is this sort of substitute parent. And I think as parents, we all know that our children, if everyone who on your program that's had children, we know that even though, at times it's pretty tough to hold those boundaries as kids get older, what we know is that when they then come out the other side, they're very grateful that you provided them guidance and, I learned this from you and how did that, whatever. And I think that, when you find people who in homelessness, particularly families in homelessness, what we found with our program with these young voices is that it's pretty damn tough to parent as you would want to parent and be homeless at the same time.
Right. Gotcha.
So I think you're right. I think it is providing some of those boundaries and frameworks, because we actually, that's, as human beings, that's what we rely on.
Yes.
Whether it's our own intrinsic boundaries and morals and things that we keep, whether it's extrinsic sort of motivation of, I'm not going to park in that car park and be there for 3 hours when it says 2 hours because I don't want to get a fine. Doesn't really matter what it is.
Yeah.
We've all got rules around us, and to some degree that's what makes our world go round.
And do you think the lack of rules, I don't want to get too, but do you think maybe as you look around, okay, it's a day-to-day thing for you, Heidi, you're dealing with, young people and homelessness and these the complex problem that it is that we're talking about. Is that one of the things we need to think about, ensuring that there are some rules and we be more like a parent, do you think, Heidi? I don't know.
Look, I think, do you know what? There's a saying that says it takes a village to raise a child. And I think one of the things that we've lost in all this busyness of our lives and busyness of, our world now, is we have lost the village. We have lost the community.
Yes.
We've lost that caring about your neighbour. I think in most of the suburbs, what you'll see is very large fences so that we can fence out everybody. And I think that what's happened, I grew up, I'm of an age now, I grew up, no one had fences. We all just had lawns out the front, and all the kids from the street ran up and down the street to different houses. Yeah. We don't have that anymore. And I think that what's happened is that mum and dad were the sort of the rule makers, but so was the community. Kids might have been kind of down at the milk bar, and it's sort of, someone's granny sort of said, "Hey, what are you doing there? Come on, stop being so noisy," or whatever. It was just, like it was a community. Yes. And kids thought, okay, we better not do what that
yeah, that's right.
Quieten down.
Yep.
Whereas I think we've lost so much of that.
Australia Overnight. Heidi Tucker's with us, the CEO of Anchor Community Care, Pathways from Homelessness. What about you, Heidi? You're wonderful, passionate, obviously sort of you understand this space very, very well, and we appreciate you sort of telling us all about it. How did you end up in this role of CEO? Is there a passion for you? Obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've worked in different sectors for 45 years now. So I've worked, I started my career in the disability sector. So I've still got a very, very soft spot in my heart for people with disability. I then moved into sort of child protection and children's services and out-of-home care and etc. But I spent quite some time also in justice services, juvenile justice. I spent time in working in jails and different areas in the justice system. About a decade ago, I had the opportunity to take up the CEO role at Anchor. It was a very little organisation out in the east, and I took it over, I guess, with a bigger vision of what I'd seen right around Australia and New Zealand, and I guess brought Anchor into the world, if you like, or the world back to Anchor, and expanded its vision, expanded what it wanted to do, and because I could see we had some really good people, some really great opportunities, built it up over the years, and I'm very proud of it as we sit today. We've innovated a new program called My Life, which is giving the opportunity to young people who are in care at the age of 16, who are in, and your listeners might not know about what's called residential services, may have heard them on the news or whatever, but they're services for young people who with very complex needs, who are in the care system, and they're congregate care. So there's 3 or 4 kids living in a house together with rostered staff. And we've given kids the opportunity at 16 to get out of that environment, to get into their own little place in a cluster of units on one site, on one physical site, with supports around them, an adult living on site all the time, staff coming in and out. Yes. And we're moving them through a sort of an 18-month to 2-year program that's based on advantage thinking, but perhaps more importantly is based on changing people's motivation from being extrinsic. So all the rules, all the legalities, all the police, this, that, and the other, to intrinsic,
Yes.
which is actually about what's good for me, what's a good decision for me,
Right.
what protects me. And that's that I think that framework around young people, and we're getting some great results. So
wonderful. And you're growing there. So for our listeners, we're a national program, as you know. So we're focusing mainly on, your focus is Melbourne and Victoria at this stage, Heidi. Would that be right? Is that what we're talking about now?
Yes, but I've worked right across the country.
Okay.
I've done a lot of work in the Northern Territory and New Zealand and different places. And I've got to say that some of the things that we do, certainly are done interstate. I think the Western world is grappling with the issue of child protection.
Right, yes.
I think the whole Western world is. I think there's no silver bullets in that, people say, well, how can we stop having kids abused? What can we do? This and that, the other. Yeah. I think we're all grappling with it. I really think, and as I say, I think we see where the countries where they have villages and small environments where people look after each other, do better.
Yes. And for our listeners to see you online and help out, we can do that, can't we? We can find you. Well, it's Anchor Community Care. You could always search for Anchor Community Care and Heidi Tucker. Yeah. But how can we find you?
Yeah, just anchor.org.au.
Right. Beautiful.
And, certainly love people to visit our website. Lots of interesting things on there. And, of course, we're always really open to people donating and or supporting our cause. Be fantastic.
Thank you, Heidi. Pleasure talking to you and the great work that you're doing.
Thanks very much, Pat.
On Australia Overnight, Heidi Tucker, the CEO of Anchor Community Care.